The gunshot echoed through Ventura's dusty Main Street, freezing Catherine Keller's heart as she watched her father's body crumple to the ground, his blood staining the California soil a dark crimson beneath the scorching summer sun of 1878. Time stopped as his killer, the notorious outlaw, Silas Thornton, locked eyes with her before mounting his horse and disappearing into the hills, leaving behind a 17-year-old girl who would soon become a woman with nothing but her father's general store, a tarnished reputation, and a town that would never see her the same way again. "Papa!" Catherine screamed, running to him despite the crowd forming around them. His eyes, already dimming, found hers. "Be strong, Catty," he whispered, his voice growing fainter. "Don't let them break you." And with those words, Harold Keller, respected merchant, widower, and Catherine's only family, took his final breath. Reverend William stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Catherine's shoulder. "Come, child. There's nothing more to be done here." Catherine shook her head, clutching her father's bloodied hand. "I can't leave him, I can't." Sheriff Miller pushed through the gathering crowd. "Thomas, get Doc Simmons, though it's too late." He knelt beside Catherine. "I'm sorry, Miss Keller. Thornton will pay for this, I promise you." Catherine looked up, tears streaming down her face. Why? Why would he kill Papa? He wasn't armed, he never carried a gun. The sheriff's expression darkened. "Your father refused to pay protection money. Thornton's been squeezing every business from here to Santa Barbara." As the undertaker and his assistant carefully lifted her father's body onto a wooden board, Catherine felt the townsfolk's eyes on her. Among the sympathetic glances, she caught whispers and suspicious looks. Martha Wilkins, the banker's wife, leaned close to Agnes Peters, not bothering to lower her voice. "Strange that Thornton only targeted Keller, don't you think, when every other shopkeeper paid up?" "I heard," Agnes replied with a meaningful look, "that the girl spent time alone with Thornton last month when he came to the store." The whispers had begun. 2 days later, Catherine stood at her father's grave, the California sun beating down mercilessly on her black mourning dress. Most of the town had attended, offering condolences that felt increasingly hollow as rumors spread. Catherine had heard them, how she'd supposedly been seen with Thornton on multiple occasions, how she might have encouraged him, how perhaps her father had caught them together, and that's why he was killed. "Miss Keller." Catherine turned to find Mrs. Simmons, the doctor's wife, standing behind her. The older woman's face was pinched with what appeared to be concern. "I wanted to say how sorry I am about your father," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "and to offer some advice. A young woman alone, it's not proper. Perhaps you should consider selling the store and going back east to your mother's people." "My mother had no people," Catherine replied flatly, "and the store is all I have left of my father." Mrs. Simmons pressed her lips together. "Well, then perhaps you should consider taking on a male business partner, for propriety's sake." Before Catherine could respond, a deep voice interrupted them. "Afternoon, ladies." Catherine turned to find Zachary Porter standing behind them, his worn Stetson in his hands. At 26, Zachary was known throughout Ventura County as one of the finest horsemen and cattle drivers in the region. He worked for the large Henderson ranch outside of town and kept mostly to himself, though Catherine had seen him in her father's store many times over the years. "Mr. Porter," Mrs. Simmons nodded stiffly. "If you'll excuse me, Miss Keller." She hurried away, already seeking out her next conversation partner. "Miss Keller," Zachary said softly, his blue eyes meeting hers. "I'm mighty sorry about your father. He was a good man." Catherine nodded, fighting back a fresh wave of tears. "Thank you, Mr. Porter. If you need anything at all, you let me know." He shifted awkwardly. Your pa helped me out when I first came to town 5 years ago, gave me credit when no one else would." "That sounds like him," Catherine said with a sad smile. "The sheriff's forming a posse to go after Thornton," Zachary continued, his voice hardening. "I've volunteered." Catherine looked up sharply. "When do you leave?" "Dawn tomorrow." "Thornton's got a 2-day head start, but we've got good trackers." He hesitated. "When we bring him back, justice will be served. I promise you that." Catherine nodded, grateful for his kindness when so many others had already begun to turn their backs on her. "Be careful, Mr. Porter." "Thornton is dangerous." "Zachary," he corrected gently. "And don't you worry about me, Miss Keller." "Catherine," she offered in return. A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Catherine, then." The posse left at dawn as promised, but Catherine had little time to dwell on it. Her father's store needed tending, and she was determined to keep it running. The first few days, customers came out of curiosity or obligation, their eyes watchful and judgmental as they whispered behind gloved hands. By the end of the first week, Catherine had heard every variation of the rumor. She'd been secretly meeting Thornton for months. She'd betrayed her father for the outlaw's affections. She'd even been seen giving him information about which shopkeepers had the most money. None of it was true, but truth mattered little in the face of such salacious gossip. On a particularly trying Monday, Mrs. Wilkins and her daughter Louisa entered the store, ostensibly to purchase fabric. Catherine greeted them with forced politeness. "We need calico for a new dress, Mrs." Wilkins announced, barely meeting Catherine's eyes. "Show us what you have." Catherine led them to the fabric section, pulling out several bolts. "The blue would look lovely with your daughter's complexion." Louisa, a girl of 18 with golden curls and a sharp tongue, looked Catherine up and down. "I'm surprised you're still running the store. It can't be easy with your situation." "My situation?" Catherine asked, though she knew perfectly well what Louisa meant. "Well," the girl continued, enjoying herself, "everyone knows about you and that outlaw. It's scandalous, really. Mama says decent folk shouldn't be shopping here at all." "Louisa," Mrs. Wilkins scolded half-heartedly, clearly not disagreeing with her daughter's assessment. Catherine carefully set down the fabric she was holding. "I never met Silas Thornton before the day he murdered my father. Any suggestion otherwise is a lie." "That's not what Johnny Simmons says," Louisa replied smugly. "He says he saw you talking to Thornton behind the livery stable last month. Said you looked mighty friendly." Catherine's cheeks burned. "Johnny Simmons is mistaken or lying. Now, would you like to purchase this fabric, or shall I help another customer?" Mrs. Wilkins sniffed. "We'll take our business to San Ventura next time. Come, Louisa." They swept out of the store, leaving Catherine trembling with anger and humiliation. That night, Catherine sat alone in the small apartment above the store, the same rooms she'd shared with her father since coming to California 10 years earlier. The isolation pressed in on her. With her mother long dead, and now her father gone too, she had no family, and it seemed she was rapidly losing what few friends she'd had in Ventura. A knock at the store's back door startled her from her thoughts. Cautiously, Catherine lit a lamp and made her way downstairs, her father's old shotgun in hand. "Who's there?" she called through the door. "It's Martha Henderson, Miss Keller. May I come in?" Catherine unbolted the door to admit the ranch owner's wife, a handsome woman in her 40s with a no-nonsense demeanor. "Mrs. Henderson, is something wrong?" The older woman shook her head. "Nothing more than usual. May we speak upstairs? What I have to say isn't for prying ears." Upstairs, Catherine offered her visitor tea, which she accepted gratefully. "I'll come straight to the point," Mrs. Henderson said after taking a sip. "I know the rumors about you are nonsense. My husband and I have known your father for many years, and we know you were raised right. "Thank you," Catherine said, her voice thick with emotion. "That means more than you know." "The problem is," Mrs. Henderson continued, "gossip like this doesn't die easily in a small town like Ventura, and a young woman alone is always vulnerable to such talk." She paused. "I've come to offer you a position at our ranch. We need someone to help with the cooking and housekeeping now that our daughters have married and moved on." Catherine was stunned. "You want me to work for you? But what about the store?" "You could sell it, or perhaps rent it out to someone looking to start a business." The idea of giving up her father's legacy pained Catherine deeply, but she understood the practical wisdom in Mrs. Henderson's offer. "May I think about it? Of course. The position is open whenever you decide." Mrs. Henderson stood to leave. "One more thing. Zachary Porter works for us. He's a good man, one of our best hands. He asked specifically after your welfare before leaving with the posse." Catherine felt her cheeks warm. "He was kind at the funeral." "He's always been quiet, but he notices more than people think, and he doesn't put stock in idle gossip." Mrs. Henderson squeezed Catherine's hand. "Think about my offer. You'd be safe at the ranch, away from all this unpleasantness." After she left, Catherine sat by the window, watching the dark street below. The store was her last connection to her father, but each day brought fewer customers and more whispers. Perhaps Mrs. Henderson was right. 2 weeks later, the posse returned to Ventura, dusty and tired. They hadn't found Thornton, who had seemingly vanished into the vast wilderness of the Sierra Nevada mountains. Sheriff Miller promised they'd keep looking, but Catherine could see the defeat in his eyes. That same afternoon, Zachary Porter entered her store, his hat in his hands and his face solemn. "Miss Keller," he nodded, "I'm sorry we couldn't bring him to justice." "You tried," Catherine said, trying to hide her disappointment. "That's more than most would do." He looked around the nearly empty store. "Business slow," Catherine sighed. "People believe what they want to believe, Mr. Porter." "Zachary," he reminded her gently, "and folks around here can be mighty foolish." He hesitated. "Mrs. Henderson mentioned she offered you a position at the ranch." "She did," Catherine confirmed. "I'm still considering it." Zachary nodded. "It's good work, and the Hendersons are fair employers, better than dealing with." He gestured vaguely toward the street, where 2 women had just crossed to avoid passing directly in front of the store. "With that," Catherine said with a bitter laugh, "yes, I suppose so." "It ain't right," Zachary said suddenly, his voice hard. "These people knew your father, they know you, and they believe some nonsense about you and a killer like Thornton." "People love a scandal," Catherine replied, touched by his indignation on her behalf. "And apparently, a shopkeeper's daughter consorting with an outlaw is too delicious to resist." "It's foolishness," he insisted. "Anyone with eyes can see you're—" He trailed off, his tanned face reddening slightly. "I'm what, Mr. Porter?" Catherine asked, curious about his sudden discomfort. "A lady," he finished awkwardly. "A proper lady who'd never do such a thing." Something warm unfurled in Catherine's chest at his defense of her character. "Thank you for saying so." The bell above the door jingled, and both turned to see Johnny Simmons saunter in, a smirk on his face. At 20, Johnny was the doctor's son and considered himself quite the catch among Ventura's young ladies. "Well, if it isn't the outlaw's sweetheart," he drawled, ignoring Zachary completely. "Got any messages you need delivered to Thornton? I hear he's headed for Mexico." Catherine felt the blood drain from her face, but before she could respond, Zachary stepped forward, his considerable height allowing him to tower over Johnny. "You apologize to Miss Keller right now," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Johnny sneered. "Or what, Cowboy?" "Everyone knows it's true. She was seen with Thornton multiple times before he killed old man Keller." "That's a lie," Catherine said firmly, finding her voice. I never met the man until the day he murdered my father." "That's not what you told me behind the livery," Johnny insisted with a lascivious wink. "You said he was exciting, different from the boring men in town." Zachary's fist connected with Johnny's jaw so quickly that Catherine barely saw it happen. The younger man stumbled backward, crashing into a display of canned goods. "You're a damn liar," Zachary growled, standing over him. "And if I hear you spreading these lies again, a sore jaw will be the least of your troubles." Johnny scrambled to his feet, wiping blood from his split lip. "You'll regret that, Porter. My father's on the town council. And mine's dead because of a man I never met before that day," Catherine said coldly. "Get out of my store." After Johnny fled, Catherine turned to Zachary, who was flexing his hand, his knuckles already bruising. "You shouldn't have done that," she said, though there was no real reproach in her voice. "He deserved worse," Zachary replied unapologetically. "You mind if I ask you something straight out, Miss Keller?" Catherine nodded, bracing herself. "Did you really never meet Thornton before that day?" The question stung, but she could see in his eyes that he wanted to believe her. "Never. I would have no reason to lie about it now with my father gone." Zachary studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. "I believe you. Just like that. Just like that," he confirmed. "I trust what I see in your eyes more than what I hear from folks like Johnny Simmons." He picked up his hat. "Think about Mrs. Henderson's offer, and if you decide to keep the store instead, know that you'll have at least one loyal customer." After he left, Catherine sat behind the counter, her mind whirling. It had been so long since anyone had simply believed her without question that Zachary's straightforward acceptance felt like a cool drink of water after weeks in the desert. She touched her cheek, still feeling the intensity of his gaze when he declared his trust in her. The next morning, Catherine woke to the sound of shattering glass. Rushing downstairs in her nightgown, she found the store's front window broken, a large rock lying amid the shards on the floor. Tied to it was a note written in crude letters, "Outlaw's whore." Tears of frustration and fear sprang to her eyes as she stood amid the destruction. This was more than gossip now, this was vandalism, violence, and it might not stop here. Sheriff Miller arrived shortly after Catherine sent a neighborhood boy to fetch him. He surveyed the damage with a grim expression. "I'll look into it, Miss Keller, but without witnesses." He trailed off. "We both know who did this," Catherine said, holding up the rock with its hateful message. "Johnny Simmons was in here yesterday, calling me the same foul names." The sheriff sighed. "Johnny's father is an influential man, Miss Keller. I can't accuse the boy without proof." "And what about me?" Catherine demanded. "Who protects me from these accusations without proof?" Sheriff Miller had the grace to look ashamed. "I'm sorry about what's happening, truly I am. Your father was my friend, but these rumors, they've taken on a life of their own." "They're lies," Catherine insisted. "Every last one of them." "Maybe so," the sheriff conceded. "But until Thornton is caught and can confirm or deny it himself, people will believe what they want to believe." After he left, promising to increase patrols past her store, Catherine swept up the broken glass, her decision made. She would accept Mrs. Henderson's offer. She couldn't continue living under this cloud of suspicion, waiting for the next rock or worse to come through her window. 3 days later, Catherine had arranged to rent the store to Mr. Peterson, who had been looking to expand his tailoring business. She packed her personal belongings and her father's few keepsakes into 2 trunks, ready for the move to Henderson Ranch. As promised, Zachary arrived with a wagon to transport her and her possessions. His expression was carefully neutral as he loaded her trunks, but Catherine caught him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. "It's the right decision," he said as they left town. the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the road. "The Hendersons will treat you fair." "I know," Catherine replied, watching Ventura recede behind them. "But it feels like running away, like letting the gossips win." "It's not running away," Zachary assured her. "It's being smart. Sometimes a strategic retreat is the best way forward." Catherine glanced at him, surprised by the wisdom in his words. "You sound like you've done some retreating yourself." A shadow crossed his face. "A time or two. I came west after the war, left a lot behind in Virginia." "The war?" Catherine asked, startled. "But you can't be more than 26 now," he confirmed. "I lied about my age. Joined up at 15 near the end. Saw enough to know I didn't want to stay in a place full of ghosts." Catherine studied his profile, seeing him with new eyes. The quiet cowboy had depth she hadn't suspected. "I'm sorry," he shrugged. "It was a long time ago. Point is, sometimes moving on isn't giving up. It's just finding a better battlefield." The Henderson Ranch spread across rolling hills about 5 miles outside of Ventura. The main house was an impressive 2-story structure with a wide veranda, surrounded by barns, bunkhouses, and corrals filled with some of the finest horses in Southern California. Mrs. Henderson welcomed Catherine warmly, showing her to a comfortable room on the second floor. "It's not fancy, but it's private and has a nice view of the mountains." "It's lovely," Catherine assured her, already feeling some of the tension leave her shoulders now that she was away from the judgmental eyes of Ventura. Life at the ranch quickly fell into a pleasant rhythm. Catherine assisted Mrs. Henderson with the cooking and household management, skills she developed running her own household after her mother's death. The ranch hands, taking their cue from the Hendersons and Zachary, treated her with respect, and for the first time in weeks, she didn't feel the weight of suspicion following her every move. Zachary was often busy with ranch work, but Catherine frequently saw him at mealtimes or crossing the yard between chores. Sometimes their eyes would meet, and he would tip his hat or offer a small smile that made her heart beat a little faster. One evening, about 2 weeks after her arrival, Catherine was sitting on the back porch, enjoying the cool night air after a warm day when Zachary approached, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "Mind some company?" he asked. "Not at all," Catherine replied, accepting the offered cup. "Thank you." He settled into the chair beside her, his long legs stretched out before him. "How are you settling in?" "Well," Catherine said truthfully, "Mrs. Henderson is kind and the work keeps my mind occupied." "That's good," Zachary nodded. "You seem lighter, less burdened." Catherine sipped her coffee, considering his observation. "I suppose I am. It's a relief not to be constantly defending myself." "You shouldn't have had to in the first place," he said with quiet vehemence. "The way the town treated you wasn't right." "No," Catherine agreed. "It wasn't. But people often believe what's easiest or most entertaining, not what's true." They sat in comfortable silence for a few moments, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. "May I ask you something personal, Mr. Porter?" "Zachary," he corrected automatically. "And yes, you may." "Why did you believe me when others didn't? You barely knew me." He considered the question carefully. "I'm a good judge of character. Have to be in my line of work. Can't trust a horse or a man that shows you one thing but means another." He turned to look at her directly. "And I remember seeing you in town in your father's store. Always honest, always kind. The idea of you with someone like Thornton." He shook his head. "It didn't fit with what I knew, what I saw in your eyes." "What do you see in my eyes, Zachary?" Catherine asked softly, surprised by her own boldness. The question hung between them, weighted with possibility. Zachary's gaze was steady, unfaltering. "Honesty," he said finally. "Strength. Sadness, but that's to be expected after what you've been through." He paused. And sometimes, when you think no one's watching, I see loneliness." Catherine's breath caught at the accuracy of his observation. "You notice a great deal for a man of few words." A hint of a smile touched his lips. "I listen more than I talk. My ma always said that's why the good Lord gave us 2 ears but only 1 mouth." Catherine laughed softly, charmed by his simple wisdom. "Your mother sounds like a sensible woman." "She was," Zachary agreed, a shadow of old grief crossing his face. "Lost her in '68 to influenza." "I'm sorry," Catherine said, understanding all too well the pain of such a loss. "My mother died when I was 7. That's why Papa and I came west. Too many memories in Pennsylvania." "And now here you are, making new memories in California," Zachary observed. "Life has a way of taking unexpected turns." "Indeed it does," Catherine agreed, thinking of how dramatically her life had changed in just a few short weeks. The conversation shifted to lighter topics: the horses Zachary was training, the upcoming harvest festival in town, Mrs. Henderson's plans to expand the vegetable garden. Catherine found herself relaxing in his company, appreciating his straightforward manner and quiet humor. When they finally said goodnight, Catherine realized it had been the most pleasant evening she'd spent since before her father's death. There was something steadying about Zachary Porter, something that made her feel safe in a world that had recently proven itself dangerous and unpredictable. As summer gave way to fall, Catherine settled fully into life at the Henderson Ranch. She wrote to her father's sister back east, informing her of his death and her new circumstances. The reply, when it came, was brief and not particularly warm. They had never been close, but it was her only family connection left. Mr. Peterson sent regular rent payments for the store, providing Catherine with a modest income beyond her wages at the ranch. She saved most of it, uncertain what the future might hold but determined to be prepared. Her friendship with Zachary deepened as the weeks passed. He began to seek out her company more deliberately, offering to escort her on errands to town or joining her for evening walks around the ranch. Catherine found herself looking forward to these encounters, her pulse quickening whenever she caught sight of his tall figure approaching. The town's attitude toward her remained mixed during her infrequent visits. Some, like the Wilkins family and Johnny Simmons, continued to treat her with cold disdain. Others, noticing her association with the respected Henderson family, and particularly with Zachary, who was well-liked despite his reserved nature, began to soften their stance. One crisp October afternoon, Catherine was returning from delivering baked goods to a neighboring ranch when she noticed an unfamiliar horse tied outside the main house. Curious, she hurried inside to find Sheriff Miller speaking with Mr. Henderson in the sitting room. "Ah, Miss Keller," the sheriff said when he saw her, "I was hoping to speak with you as well." "Has something happened?" Catherine asked, setting down her basket. Mr. Henderson nodded gravely. "The sheriff brings news about Thornton." "We got him," Sheriff Miller confirmed. "Or rather, the Arizona Territory Rangers did. There was a shootout in a small mining town near Prescott. Thornton was killed resisting arrest." Catherine sank into a chair, a confusing mix of emotions washing over her. Relief that the man who killed her father could never hurt anyone again. Disappointment that he wouldn't face proper justice. And a strange emptiness, knowing that even with Thornton dead, the whispers about her might never fully disappear. "There's more," the sheriff continued. "Before he died, Thornton confessed to several murders, including your father's. He also mentioned that he'd never met you before that day, Miss Keller. Said he didn't even know Harold had a daughter until he saw you in the street." Catherine closed her eyes briefly, a weight lifting from her shoulders. "Did he say why? Why he targeted my father?" The sheriff shifted uncomfortably. It seems your father witnessed Thornton robbing a stagecoach outside of town last spring. He recognized Thornton but didn't immediately report it because he feared retaliation. When Thornton started demanding protection money, your father refused and threatened to go to the law. That's when Thornton decided to silence him. Papa never said anything, Catherine whispered. He never warned me. He was protecting you, Mr. Henderson said gently. That's what fathers do. After the sheriff left, promising to make Thornton's confession public knowledge, Catherine retreated to the garden, needing solitude to process this new information. Her father had died trying to do the right thing, and in the aftermath, she had been vilified by the very community he'd served honestly for years. She wasn't sure how long she sat there before she heard footsteps on the garden path. Looking up, she saw Zachary approaching, concern etched on his features. "Mr. Henderson told me about Thornton," he said, sitting beside her on the stone bench. "How are you?" "I don't know," Catherine admitted. "Relieved, I suppose, vindicated, but also angry," Zachary suggested. "Yes," she acknowledged, surprised by his insight. "Angry that my father died. Angry that people believed such terrible things about me. Angry that even now, with the truth known, some will still whisper behind my back." Zachary was silent for a moment, then said quietly, "You could leave. Start fresh somewhere else where no one knows about any of this." The suggestion startled her. "Leave? But where would I go?" he shrugged, not quite meeting her eyes. "Anywhere you want. California's full of opportunities for someone smart and hardworking like you. San Francisco, maybe. Or down to Los Angeles." "Are you trying to get rid of me, Mr. Porter?" Catherine asked, trying to keep her tone light despite the unexpected hurt his words caused. His head snapped up. "No, God, no. That's not," he broke off, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "I just want you to know you have choices. You're not trapped here. Not by gossip, not by your father's store, not by anything." Catherine studied his face, trying to understand what lay behind his words. "And if I chose to stay here at the ranch, or even back in Ventura now that the truth is known," something flickered in his eyes, hope, perhaps, "then that would be your choice too. A good one, I think." "Do you?" she asked softly. "Yes," he said firmly. "I do." In the following days, news of Thornton's confession spread through Ventura like wildfire. The story appeared in the local newspaper, complete with Sheriff Miller's confirmation that Catherine had been unjustly maligned. Some of those who had been most vocal in spreading gossip now found themselves facing community disapproval for their eagerness to believe the worst of an innocent young woman. The Hendersons insisted that Catherine take a few days to consider her next steps, assuring her that her position at the ranch was secure regardless of what she decided. Catherine appreciated their kindness, but found herself increasingly drawn to the idea of returning to Ventura and reclaiming her father's store. It felt like unfinished business, a wrong that needed to be righted. When she shared these thoughts with Zachary during one of their evening walks, he nodded thoughtfully. "I understand wanting to go back on your own terms," he said, "to show them all you weren't driven away." "Exactly," Catherine agreed, pleased by his understanding. "The store was my father's legacy. Running it properly would honor his memory better than hiding away, even in a place as welcoming as the ranch." Zachary was quiet for several steps. "Would you want company when you go back to town to speak with Peterson about the store?" Catherine glanced at him, noting the careful neutrality of his expression. "I would appreciate that very much, Zachary." His shoulders relaxed slightly. "Tomorrow, then, I can get Henderson to spare me for the afternoon." The next day they rode into Ventura together, Catherine feeling both nervous and determined. The town looked much the same as when she'd left it, the main street bustling with midday activity. As they passed, several people stopped to stare, and Catherine heard her name whispered more than once. "Ignore them," Zachary advised quietly as they dismounted in front of the tailor shop that had once been Keller's general store. "You've got nothing to be ashamed of." Mr. Peterson welcomed them warmly, inviting them into the back office that had once been her father's domain. Catherine felt a pang of nostalgia seeing the familiar space transformed with bolts of fabric and sewing patterns. "I've been expecting you, Miss Keller," the tailor said. "I imagine you'll be wanting to terminate our arrangement now that your name has been cleared." "Actually, Mr. Peterson, I've come to discuss possibly selling the building to you outright," Catherine replied. "You've made the space your own, and I think my father would be pleased to see it occupied by a respectable business." Mr. Peterson looked surprised but pleased. "That's very generous, Miss Keller. I'd be interested, certainly, though I'd need time to raise the funds." "There's no rush," Catherine assured him. "We can work out terms that suit us both." As they discussed potential arrangements, Catherine felt Zachary's steady presence behind her, supporting without interfering. His confidence in her bolstered her own, helping her negotiate terms that would provide her with financial security, while allowing Mr. Peterson a reasonable time frame to purchase the property. After leaving the tailor shop, they walked down the street toward the cafe for lunch. Catherine was acutely aware of the stares following them, some curious, others apologetic, a few still hostile. Martha Wilkins emerged from the millinery shop just as they passed, stopping short when she saw Catherine, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Miss Keller," she said stiffly. "I'm pleased to see you well," Catherine nodded coolly. "Mrs. Wilkins," the banker's wife hesitated, clearly struggling with herself. "I believe I owe you an apology," she finally said. "I spoke unkindly about you and contributed to misconceptions." "Yes, you did," Catherine agreed, her voice steady. "You chose to believe the worst about me without evidence, and you encouraged others to do the same." Mrs. Wilkins bristled slightly at the direct accusation but didn't deny it. "As I said, I apologize." "Your apology is noted," Catherine replied. "Though I wonder if you'd offer it so readily if Thornton hadn't confessed, and if I weren't standing here with Mr. Porter." Without waiting for a response, Catherine continued walking, Zachary falling into step beside her. Once they were out of earshot, he glanced down at her with new appreciation. "That was well handled," he said with a hint of admiration. "Gracious but not doormat-ish." Catherine felt a smile tugging at her lips. "I've had time to think about what I would say to people like Mrs. Wilkins. I don't want to hold grudges, but I won't pretend their actions didn't hurt me deeply." "Understandable," Zachary agreed. "Though I reckon most folks will be more sincere in their regret than Mrs. Wilkins was." "Perhaps," Catherine conceded. "But their opinions matter less to me now than they once did." They had nearly reached the cafe when Johnny Simmons stepped out of the saloon across the street, clearly already in his cups, despite the early hour. He spotted them immediately and staggered toward them, his expression ugly. "Well, look who's back," he slurred. "The sainted Miss Keller and her cowboy protector." Zachary stepped slightly in front of Catherine. "Move along, Simmons, you're drunk." Johnny sneered. "Convenient, wasn't it? Thornton dying before he could be questioned properly. Makes it easy for her to claim innocence." "The Rangers have multiple witnesses to his confession," Catherine said evenly. "Your continued insistence on these lies says more about your character than mine, Johnny." "Whore," he spat, lunging forward suddenly. Zachary moved with lightning speed, catching Johnny's arm and twisting it behind his back in one fluid motion. "That's enough," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Apologize to the lady, then go sleep it off." "Or what?" Johnny challenged, struggling ineffectively against Zachary's grip. "Or I'll drag you over to your father's office, and let him see what a disgrace his son has become," Zachary replied calmly. "I'm sure Doc Simmons would love to explain to his patients why his boy is publicly harassing an innocent woman in broad daylight." The threat seemed to penetrate Johnny's alcohol-fogged brain. He slumped slightly. "Fine. Sorry, Miss Keller," he muttered insincerely. Zachary released him with a small shove toward the saloon. "Go home, Johnny, and stay away from Miss Keller in the future." As Johnny slunk away, Catherine exhaled slowly. "Thank you, but I could have handled him." "I know you could," Zachary said with unexpected gentleness, "but you shouldn't have to." Inside the cafe, they found a quiet table in the corner. Conversation dipped briefly when they entered, then resumed with an artificial casualness. The waitress approached, her expression cautiously friendly. "Miss Keller, welcome back," she said, setting down menus. "Mr. Porter, what can I get you folks today?" After they ordered, Catherine leaned forward slightly. "That wasn't as bad as I feared," she admitted. "Most people are more embarrassed than anything," Zachary observed. "They know they were wrong about you, and they don't quite know how to face you now." "Have you been watching the town's reaction?" Catherine asked, curious. Zachary shrugged. "A bit. I've been in town a few times since the news broke, heard people talking. Most decent folks feel ashamed for believing the gossip. And the indecent ones," a hint of a smile touched his lips, "they're not worth your concern." As they ate, Catherine found herself relaxing, the initial tension of returning to Ventura easing. By the time they finished their meal and prepared to leave, she felt confident in her decision to sell the store and move forward. Outside, the afternoon sun bathed the street in golden light. Catherine paused, looking around at the town that had been her home for a decade. "It's strange," she mused. "I thought coming back would feel like reclaiming something, but instead it feels like saying goodbye." Zachary studied her face. "And is that what you want, to say goodbye to Ventura?" Catherine considered the question carefully. "I think so. There are too many painful memories here now. I'd like a fresh start, but not in San Francisco or Los Angeles." "Where then?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. She turned to face him directly. "I was thinking I might stay at the Henderson Ranch if they'll have me. I've come to feel at home there." Something flickered in Zachary's eyes. "I'm sure they'd be pleased to keep you on." "And you?" Catherine asked boldly. "Would you be pleased if I stayed?" The question hung between them, laden with meaning beyond the simple words. Zachary's expression softened, the habitual reserve dropping away to reveal something warmer, more vulnerable. "More than pleased," he said quietly. "I'd be grateful for the chance to know you better, Catherine, if that's something you might want to." Catherine felt a flutter of anticipation in her chest. "I think I would like that very much, Zachary." He offered her his arm as they walked back to their horses, a simple gesture that felt profoundly significant. As they rode out of town, Catherine didn't look back. Her future, she decided, lay ahead of her, not behind. The weeks that followed brought a gentle transformation to Catherine's life. True to his word, Zachary began courting her properly, with Mr. and Mrs. Henderson's amused blessing. They took Sunday rides together, explored the hills surrounding the ranch, and spent evenings on the porch talking about everything and nothing. Catherine learned that beneath Zachary's quiet exterior lay a thoughtful mind and a kind heart. He told her about his childhood in Virginia, his brief but harrowing experience in the war, and his journey west in search of peace. She shared stories of her own memories of her mother, her father's unwavering love, and her dreams for the future. As December arrived, bringing cool weather and holiday preparations to the ranch, Mr. Peterson completed the purchase of the store building, providing Catherine with a substantial sum that she carefully invested with Mr. Henderson's guidance. With her financial future secure and her heart increasingly engaged, Catherine found herself happier than she'd been in years. One crisp evening, Zachary invited her for a ride to see a nearby valley that was particularly beautiful at sunset. As they reached a ridge overlooking a sweep of golden grassland bordered by distant mountains, he helped her dismount, his hands lingering at her waist a moment longer than necessary. "It's breathtaking," Catherine said, gazing at the vista before them. "Yes, it is," Zachary agreed, though when she glanced at him, she found him looking at her rather than the view. Her cheeks warmed under his steady gaze. "You're not even looking at the valley. I'm looking at something far more beautiful," he said simply. Catherine's heart fluttered. "Zachary Porter, I do believe you're becoming quite the smooth talker." A smile tugged at his lips. "Not smooth, just honest." He took her hand in his. "Catherine, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" she asked, suddenly nervous at his serious tone. "That first day when you came to the ranch, Mrs. Henderson asked me to help you settle in because she thought we might suit each other." He paused. "I was willing enough. I'd always noticed you in town, thought you were pretty and kind, but I didn't expect." "Didn't expect what?" Catherine prompted when he fell silent. "Didn't expect to fall in love with you," he finished quietly. "With your strength and your kindness and the way you face the world head-on, even when it's been cruel to you." Catherine's breath caught. "Zachary." "I know it might be too soon," he continued quickly. "After everything you've been through, and I'm just a cowboy with not much to offer except hard work and a true heart, but I love you, Catherine Keller. And if you could see your way to giving me a chance, I'd spend every day trying to make you happy." Tears pricked Catherine's eyes, but they were tears of joy. "Oh, Zachary, you wonderful, observant man. How can you notice so much and still not see that I've been falling in love with you too?" His expression transformed, hope and joy replacing uncertainty. "You have." "Yes," she confirmed, squeezing his hand. "How could I not? You believed in me when no one else did. You said you trusted what your heart knew, and your heart was right." Zachary's free hand came up to gently touch her cheek. "May I kiss you, Catherine?" She nodded, her heart racing as he leaned down to press his lips softly against hers. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened with a hunger that surprised them both. When they finally broke apart, both were breathless. "I've wanted to do that for months," Zachary admitted, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm glad you finally did," Catherine replied, her own voice not entirely steady. "And I hope you'll do it again. Often." He laughed, a rare, joyous sound that made her heart soar. "That can certainly be arranged." As the sun sank lower, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Zachary pulled something from his pocket. "I've been carrying this around for weeks, waiting for the right moment," he said, opening his hand to reveal a simple gold ring with a small pearl. "It was my mother's. I'd be honored if you'd wear it, Catherine, if you'd marry me and build a life together." Catherine looked from the ring to Zachary's face, seeing all her hopes for the future reflected in his eyes. "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, I'll marry you, Zachary Porter." His smile was brilliant as he slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into another kiss, this one filled with promise. Spring came early to Southern California in 1879. The hills turned emerald green after winter rains, and wildflowers carpeted the landscape in vibrant colors. On a perfect April day, with the scent of orange blossoms in the air, Catherine Keller became Catherine Porter in a simple ceremony at the Henderson Ranch. The guest list was small: the Hendersons and their ranch hands, a few neighbors, and even Sheriff Miller, representing the better side of Ventura. Catherine wore a dress of pale blue silk, with her mother's lace veil and white roses from Mrs. Henderson's garden. As they exchanged vows beneath an arbor twined with spring flowers, Catherine looked into Zachary's eyes and saw nothing but love and certainty. The path that had brought them together had been marked by tragedy and injustice, but it had led to something beautiful and true. "I promise to trust what my heart knows," Zachary said softly as he slipped a wedding band onto her finger to join her engagement ring. "And my heart knows that you are the best and truest woman I've ever known." Catherine blinked back tears of joy. "And I promise to face whatever comes our way with the same courage and faith you've shown me, to believe in our love even when the world tries to tell us otherwise." The celebration afterward was joyous but intimate. As the sun began to set, Zachary led Catherine away from the festivities to a quiet corner of the garden. "Happy, Mrs. Porter?" he asked, his arms encircling her waist. "Very happy, Mr. Porter," she assured him, leaning into his embrace. "Though I'm curious about one thing." "What's that?" "Where we'll be living," she said. "You've been very mysterious about it." A smile spread across Zachary's face. "I wanted it to be a surprise. Mr. Henderson offered me the position of ranch foreman last month. Old Jenkins is retiring, and Henderson said I was the natural choice to replace him." "Zachary, that's wonderful," Catherine exclaimed. "But what does that have to do with where we'll live?" "The foreman's house," he explained. "It's on the north side of the property. 2 bedrooms, a good-sized kitchen, even a small garden plot. Henderson's had the men fixing it up for weeks." "It's not fancy," but Catherine silenced him with a kiss. "It sounds perfect, absolutely perfect." Relief and happiness mingled in his expression. "I wanted to give you a proper home, somewhere we could build a life together, maybe raise a family someday." "I'd like that," Catherine said softly. "Very much." Later that night, as they approached the small house that would be their first home together, Catherine paused to look up at the star-filled sky. So much had changed in less than a year. She had lost her father, weathered terrible accusations, and found unexpected love. The pain hadn't disappeared entirely. She still missed her father terribly, but it had been transformed by the joy she'd found with Zachary. "What are you thinking about?" Zachary asked, coming to stand beside her. "About how life can change so quickly," she replied. "A year ago, I never would have imagined standing here as your wife." He took her hand, his thumb tracing over her wedding band. "Regrets?" "Not one," Catherine assured him, squeezing his hand. "You said once that I had choices, that I wasn't trapped by the past or by other people's opinions." "You were right. I chose this life, chose you, and it's the best choice I've ever made. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it," Zachary promised, leading her toward the warmly lit house that awaited them. "I know you will," Catherine said, her heart full. "Because I believe what my heart knows. And my heart knows that this is exactly where I'm meant to be." As they crossed the threshold together, Catherine knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them side by side. The gossips of Ventura had tried to define her with their lies, but they had failed. Instead, she had found the truth of herself in Zachary's unwavering faith and in her own resilience. It was a foundation strong enough to build a lifetime upon. 5 years later, Catherine sat on the porch of their expanded home, watching Zachary teaching their 3-year-old son, Harold, to ride his first pony. Their infant daughter, Elizabeth, slept peacefully in her cradle nearby, her tiny hand curled around a wooden toy her father had carved for her. The Henderson ranch had prospered under Zachary's management as foreman, and the elderly couple had come to regard the Porters as family. Catherine had taken over keeping the ranch's books, her sharp mind for numbers proving an asset to the operation. Occasionally, they visited Ventura for supplies or church services. The town had grown and changed, with new faces among the old. The whispers had long since died away, replaced by respectful nods and genuine smiles. Catherine had forgiven, if not forgotten, choosing to focus on the present rather than the painful past. As she watched her husband lift their laughing son from the pony's back and swing him high in the air, Catherine felt a surge of gratitude for the life they had built together. It hadn't always been easy. There had been droughts and difficult harvests, illness and arguments, but through it all, their love had only deepened. Zachary looked up, catching her eye across the yard. Even now, after 5 years of marriage, his smile still made her heart beat faster. He said something to Harold, then the two of them made their way toward the porch, the little boy running ahead on sturdy legs. "Mama," Harold called excitedly. "I rode Spot all by myself, I saw," Catherine said, opening her arms to receive her son's enthusiastic embrace. "You're becoming quite the horseman." Zachary followed more slowly, his eyes warm with love as he took in the scene: his wife, his son, his infant daughter. He sat beside Catherine, one arm draping naturally across her shoulders. "Everything all right?" he asked, noticing her contemplative mood. "Everything is perfect," Catherine assured him, leaning into his embrace. "I was just thinking about how fortunate we are." Zachary's expression softened as he looked from his son, now playing with wooden blocks at their feet, to his sleeping daughter. "We are that," he agreed. "Though I'd say it's more than fortune. We built this life together, Catherine. Choice by choice, day by day." Catherine smiled, remembering the uncertain young woman she'd been and marveling at the journey that had brought her here. "Do you ever wonder what might have happened if things had been different? If my father hadn't been killed, if the town hadn't turned against me?" Zachary considered the question. "I like to think we'd have found our way to each other eventually," he said. "Some things are just meant to be." "Like us?" Catherine asked, her voice teasing but her eyes serious. "Exactly like us," Zachary confirmed, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I told you once that I trust what my heart knows, and my heart has always known that you were the one for me, Catherine Porter." As the sun began to set over the California hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Catherine felt the truth of his words settle deep in her soul. The gossips of Ventura had once tried to define her with their lies, but love had written a different story, one of faith, forgiveness, and a future brighter than she could have imagined.